Commander James Reed stood at attention in the Grand United Earth Embassy, his weathered face showing no emotion as the alien delegates laughed. Their mockery echoed through the marble halls, bouncing off the high ceilings and polished floors. The gathering was meant to be Earth's formal introduction to the Galactic Council, but it had turned into something else entirely. "You mean to tell us," the tall, silver-skinned council speaker Marcus said between chuckles, "that your species still travels through plain three-dimensional space? How quaint." His voice dripped with amusement as he examined the holographic display of Earth's most advanced starship. Reed kept his hands clasped behind his back, fingers tightening until his knuckles turned white. The ship on display, the UES Stellar Dawn, was supposed to be humanity's pride. Its fusion drives and quantum shields had taken decades to perfect. Now, before these aliens, it looked like a child's toy. "We find our current technology sufficient for our needs," Reed replied, his deep voice steady despite the tension in his jaw. Around him, the other alien representatives, beings of light, crystal, and shapes that hurt to look at, continued their quiet laughter. A blue-skinned delegate floated forward, its body rippling like water. "Oh, you poor things, you don't even realize what you're missing. Watch this." With a casual gesture, the alien's personal transport ship outside the embassy vanished, reappearing simultaneously at 12 different points in the sky. Simple fourth-dimensional travel. Basic stuff. Really, we teach this to our children. Reed watched the display without flinching, though his heart raced. If they only knew what was happening beneath the surface of Mars right now. If they could only see what humanity had actually achieved. "Tell me, Commander," Speaker Marcus said, moving closer, his silver skin reflecting the afternoon sunlight. "How long does it take your fastest ship to reach your own moon?" 3 hours, Speaker Marcus. Another round of laughter filled the room. A crystalline being near the back actually cracked with amusement, small shards tinkling to the floor. 3 hours. We could cross your entire solar system in seconds using fifth-dimensional shortcuts. Marcus shook his head, his expression a mix of pity and amusement. "Perhaps in a few thousand years, your species will graduate to real space travel." Reed thought about the classified reports sitting on his desk, about Project Infinity, about what Dr. Walker had achieved in the deep laboratories under Mars' surface. He thought about it and kept his face carefully blank. "We appreciate the Galactic Council's assessment of our capabilities," Reed said diplomatically. "Earth looks forward to learning from our more advanced neighbors." A smaller alien, looking like a floating collection of geometric shapes, spoke up. "At least they're humble about their limitations." "That's something, isn't it?" This brought another wave of chuckles from the assembled delegates. Speaker Marcus raised his hand, bringing some order to the room. "Very well, Commander Reed. The Galactic Council accepts Earth as a protectorate species. You'll be assigned mentors to help guide your technological development." Though he paused, his silver lips curling into a smile. "I suggest you don't hold your breath waiting to join us as equals." Reed bowed slightly, playing his role perfectly. "Earth thanks the Council for its generosity." As the delegates filed out, still sharing amused glances, Reed's communicator vibrated silently in his pocket. He waited until the last alien had left before pulling it out. The message was simple, encoded in the highest military encryption Earth possessed. "Project Infinity Phase 1 complete. 7D DRIV stable. Awaiting final authorization." Reed allowed himself a small smile as he deleted the message. Let them laugh. Let them mock humanity's primitive technology. Let them think Earth was nothing but a backwater planet full of simple beings playing with simple toys. They would learn soon enough. The commander stepped out onto the embassy's balcony, watching the alien ships perform their fourth-dimensional tricks in the sky above. In just a few months, those tricks would look like child's play compared to what humanity was about to unleash. For now, though, Reed would wait. He would endure their laughter and their mockery. After all, those who laugh last, laugh best. Deep beneath the red sands of Mars, Dr. Ann Walker moved through the massive underground facility with quick, purposeful steps. The lights overhead reflected off her protective suit as she made her way to the main testing chamber. Around her, the greatest secret in human history was taking shape. "Status report," she called out as she entered the central control room. The massive window in front of her revealed a sight that would have made the Galactic Council's laughter die in their throats. The Infinity's Edge, humanity's first seventh-dimensional vessel. "All systems are running perfectly," Dr. Walker, her assistant, reported from behind a bank of glowing screens. "The 7D drive is maintaining stability at 99.8%. The ship itself was beautiful in a strange way. Its hull seemed to bend in directions that shouldn't exist, parts of it appearing and disappearing as it shifted through dimensional planes even while docked. It was massive, nearly 2 miles long, yet sometimes it looked smaller than a car, depending on which dimensions you were seeing it through." "Have you seen the news from Earth?" another scientist asked, showing her a tablet. "The Council species are still putting on their little shows in the sky. Fourth-dimensional hops and fifth-dimensional slides." He shook his head, like children showing off their toy cars. Walker smiled as she checked the latest readings. "Let them play. We've got work to do." The facility buzzed with activity as hundreds of Earth's brightest minds worked on different aspects of the project. Some were fine-tuning the dimensional anchors that kept the ship stable across all 7 dimensions. Others were perfecting the navigation systems that would guide it through spaces the Council species couldn't even imagine. A deep hum filled the chamber as they began the day's testing sequence. The Infinity's Edge shifted slightly, its form becoming even harder to look at as it extended parts of itself into the 6th and 7th dimensions. "Power output stable," called out one technician. "Dimensional field integrity holding at maximum." Walker walked closer to the window, watching as their years of work proved itself yet again. The Council thought humanity was stuck in 3 dimensions, barely able to reach their own moon. They had no idea that humans had discovered something they had missed, a way to access all 7 spatial dimensions simultaneously. Her communicator beeped. It was Commander Reed. "How are we doing, Doctor?" His voice came through clearly despite being transmitted from Earth. "Better than expected," Walker replied. "The Council's visit yesterday actually helped. Their ships gave us some excellent data on 4th and 5th dimensional travel. Honestly, their approach is rather basic." "Basic?" Reed asked, amusement in his voice. "They're using brute force to push through dimensions. We're learning to dance with them." Walker brought up a technical display. "Their method is like breaking down a door. Ours is like finding the key." An alert flashed on one of the screens. Walker quickly checked it and felt her heart speed up with excitement. "Commander," she said, "we just hit a new milestone. The drive's stability has reached 99.9%. We're ready for the next phase." There was a pause on the other end. "The Council is planning a formal ceremony next month to officially declare Earth a protected developing world." Reed's voice carried a hint of iron now. "They're going to make a show of it. Invite representatives from 50 advanced worlds to demonstrate their dimensional mastery." Walker watched as the Infinity's Edge performed another perfect test sequence. "Perfect timing," she said. "We'll be ready. How long do you want us to keep up this act?" "Until I give the signal," Reed replied. "For now, let them think we're their primitive cousins. Let them plan their grand ceremony. It will make the reveal all the more satisfying." After ending the call, Walker turned to her team. "All right, everyone, let's run the full sequence again. I want every system perfect. When we show the Council what humanity can really do, I want their jaws to hit the floor." The underground chamber filled with renewed activity. The Infinity's Edge hummed with power, its shape continuing to challenge the human mind as it existed in 7 dimensions at once. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn that they had severely underestimated humanity, and Walker couldn't wait to see their faces when they did. The attack came without warning. Commander Reed was in his office at Earth Defense Command when the alarms began blaring. The holographic display erupted with red warning signals as over 300 alien vessels emerged from fourth-dimensional space around Earth. "Report," he barked into his communicator. "Sir, we're detecting ships from the Crimson Dominion," his officer responded. "They're not responding to hails. They've already destroyed 3 of our orbital stations." Reed's jaw tightened. The Crimson Dominion, one of the more aggressive council species who had seemed particularly amused by humanity's primitive technology during their visits. The sky above Earth lit up with weapons fire. The Dominion's ships danced through multiple dimensions, appearing and disappearing as they struck Earth's defensive platforms. Conventional human ships, limited to 3 dimensions, were being torn apart. "Sir," another officer burst into his office. "The Galactic Council is responding to our distress call. They're sending observers." "Observers?" Reed's voice was deadly quiet. "Yes, sir. They say this will be an excellent opportunity for humanity to learn about real space combat. They want to observe how we handle this crisis." Reed stood up slowly, his hands clenched into fists. Through his office window, he could see the flashes of battle in the sky. Earth's best 3-dimensional ships were fighting bravely, but they were being slaughtered. His secure communicator buzzed. Dr. Walker's face appeared on the screen. "Commander," she said without preamble, "Infinity's Edge is ready. All systems are at 100% stability. We're just waiting for your word." Reed watched as another human defense platform exploded. In the distance, he could see the shimmer of Council observation ships arriving to watch humanity's humiliation. "They're not even trying to help," he said softly. "They're treating this like entertainment." "Sir," Walker pressed, "your orders?" Reed straightened his uniform. "How fast can you get the ship here?" "Using all 7 dimensions." Walker smiled. "We can be there before you finish asking the question." "Do it." Reed's voice carried the weight of humanity's future. "Show them what we can really do." The next few minutes were chaos. The Crimson Dominion ships pressed their attack, clearly enjoying their supposed superiority. The Council observation vessels hovered safely at the edges of the solar system, their sensors recording everything. Then everything changed. It started as a ripple in space, but not just in 3 dimensions, or 4, or even 5. Reality itself seemed to bend and flex in ways that made both human and alien sensors scream in confusion. The Infinity's Edge emerged. It appeared simultaneously in 50 different locations around Earth, its impossible geometry finally unveiled for all to see. The ship's hull gleamed with an otherworldly light as it existed in all 7 spatial dimensions at once. "This is Dr. Ann Walker of the Earth Defense Force vessel Infinity's Edge." Her voice boomed across all communication channels. "To the Crimson Dominion fleet, you will cease your attack immediately." Laughter came across the channels, but it was nervous laughter now. "Your primitive species dares tow." The Dominion commander began. The Infinity's Edge moved. In less than a second, it passed through dimensions that the Dominion ships couldn't even perceive. Their 4th-dimensional tricks seemed childish in comparison. 5 Dominion ships simply ceased to exist as the Earth vessel's weapons struck them through the 7th dimension. What is this?" The Dominion commander's voice shook. "This is impossible." "This," Reed's voice cut in, "is humanity showing its real face." The Infinity's Edge continued its dance through dimensions even the Council thought were theoretical. Dominion ships tried to flee, jumping through their 4th-dimensional shortcuts, only to find the Earth vessel already waiting for them, having taken paths they couldn't understand. In the observation ships, the Council representatives watched in stunned silence as their comfortable understanding of the galaxy crumbled. "Status report," Reed called out, allowing himself a small smile. "Enemy fleet is in full retreat, sir," Walker reported. "The Council observation ships are, well, they don't seem to be laughing anymore." Reed nodded. "Send a message to the Council." Tell them Earth accepts their offer to become a protected world. He paused and informed them that we'll be providing the protection. Above Earth, the infinity's edge hung in impossible angles through 7 dimensions, a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity had never been primitive. They had simply been patient. The Council's emergency observation chamber was in complete chaos. Hundreds of representatives from the most advanced species in the galaxy watched in stunned silence as their sensors tried, and failed, to fully track the infinity's edge's movements. Speaker Marcus's silver skin had lost its shine as he stared at the displays. This cannot be possible," he whispered. The massive ship hung in space, parts of it sliding in and out of different dimensions. When their sensors tried to track it in the 4th dimension, it was already moving through the 5th. When they adjusted to the 5th, it had shifted to the 6th and 7th. Requesting permission to approach the human vessel, one of the scientific observers called out, their crystalline form vibrating with excitement and fear. These readings are unlike anything in Council records. Before Marcus could respond, space rippled again. The infinity's edge didn't just move. It flowed through dimensions most of the Council had thought were purely theoretical. The ship appeared directly in front of the observation fleet, its massive form making their most advanced vessels look primitive in comparison. Dr. Walker's hologram appeared in the center of the Council chamber. She stood confidently, a small smile on her face, as she watched the beings who had mocked humanity scramble to make sense of what they were seeing. "Distinguished members of the Council," she began, her voice calm and clear. "I believe now would be a good time to discuss the true nature of dimensional physics." Marcus stepped forward, trying to maintain his diplomatic composure. "Dr. Walker, how long has Earth possessed this technology?" "Longer than you've been laughing at our primitive 3-dimensional ships," she replied. A holographic display appeared beside her, showing equations that made several Council scientists gasp. "You see, while you were busy pushing your way through dimensions, we were studying how they actually work." The display showed the infinity's edge's drive system, or at least the parts of it that could be represented in 3 dimensions. Many of the Council members struggled to even look at the full technical drawings, their minds unable to process the 7-dimensional mathematics involved. "But your ships, your space stations," a blue-skinned delegate protested. "We watched you struggling with basic space travel." Commander Reed's hologram appeared next to Walker's. "What you watched was what we wanted you to see. A simple lesson humanity learned long ago. Sometimes the best way to develop in peace is to let others underestimate you." As if to demonstrate his point, the infinity's edge performed a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible. It existed in multiple dimensional planes simultaneously, its weapon systems ready but not threatening. "Your 4th-dimensional travel is like digging a tunnel through space," Walker explained, bringing up more displays. "5th-dimensional travel is like building a bridge. But true dimensional mastery," she gestured at their ship, "that's like becoming the space itself." The chamber erupted with questions. Council species that had prided themselves on their advanced technology were suddenly faced with the reality that they had been seeing only a fraction of what was possible. "How do you maintain stability across all 7 dimensions?" one scientist asked. "How do you navigate through dimensional planes we can't even detect?" another called out. Walker held up her hand. "All of these questions will be answered in time. But first," she looked at Speaker Marcus, "I believe we need to discuss humanity's status in the Council." Marcus had the grace to look embarrassed. Of course. Clearly, we need to reevaluate Earth's position immediately." "No," Reed cut in firmly. "First, we need to establish new protocols for how advanced species treat developing ones. What happened today with the Crimson Dominion? That ends now." The infinity's edge shifted again, its impossible geometry serving as a reminder of humanity's true capabilities. In the space around it, several Council ships tried to perform their own dimensional maneuvers, but they looked clumsy and simple in comparison. "We hid our capabilities because we wanted to develop in peace," Reed continued. "But make no mistake, Humanity will no longer stand by while stronger species prey on weaker ones. The galaxy is about to change. Walker nodded. And for those willing to learn, she added, highlighting the mathematical displays again, humanity is willing to teach. After all, she smiled. Isn't that what advanced species are supposed to do? The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. In less than a day, the entire power structure of the galaxy had been upended, all because they had made the mistake of laughing at the wrong species. Admiral Thomas Gray stood on the bridge of the Infinity's Edge, watching as the remaining Crimson Dominion warships gathered for what they called a final demonstration of true power. Behind their fleet, the Council observation ships hovered nervously, no longer showing any sign of their previous amusement. They're forming an attack pattern, Dr. Walker reported from her station, her fingers dancing over the control panels. They're planning to use synchronized fourth and fifth dimensional strikes. Gray allowed himself a small smile. Let them try. Commander Reed, are you receiving the feed? Crystal clear. Admiral, Reed's voice came through from Earth Command. The entire council is watching. Time to show them what 7 dimensions can really do. The Crimson Dominion fleet, nearly 200 ships strong, began their attack. They moved in perfect formation, their vessels sliding between dimensions in what would have once been considered an impressive display of advanced technology. Should we move to defensive positions? A young officer asked. No, Walker replied calmly. Let them come. In fact, she looked at Admiral Gray. Permission to demonstrate why humanity chose to master all 7 dimensions. Gray nodded. Show them. Walker's hands moved across her console, and the Infinity's Edge responded. The ship didn't just move, it rewrote the rules of space around it. As the enemy fleet approached through their 4th dimensional shortcuts, the Earth vessel existed simultaneously in 30 different locations, each position precisely calculated. Impossible. The Dominion Fleet Commander's voice boomed across the communication channels. No ship can maintain quantum coherence across that many positions. That's because you're thinking in 4 dimensions, Walker responded. She pressed another series of controls. Let me show you what happens when you understand all 7. The Infinity's Edge's weapon systems activated, but they didn't fire in any way the galaxy had seen before. The ship attacked through dimensional planes that the Dominion fleet couldn't even perceive. Energy beams struck from angles that shouldn't exist, passing through their strongest shields as if they weren't there. Their shields are calibrated for 4-dimensional attacks, Walker explained to the watching council observers. They might as well be trying to stop a bullet with a shadow. 20 Dominion ships disappeared in the first volley. Not destroyed. They were simply shifted into a dimensional pocket where they could do no harm. Their crews would be safe but powerless until humanity chose to release them. This is impossible. The Dominion commander's voice shook. Fall back. Full retreat. But retreat was no longer an option. The Infinity's Edge had altered the dimensional geometry of space around the battlefield. When the Dominion ships tried to flee through their 4th dimensional corridors, they found themselves looping back to their starting positions. You don't understand. Gray spoke for the first time, his voice carrying to all ships in the area. We're not just using 7 dimensions, we're controlling them. To demonstrate, Walker activated the ship's primary systems. The Infinity's Edge split into 7 distinct versions of itself, each one operating in a different dimensional plane, but all connected, all part of the same whole. The sight made several council observers physically recoil as their minds struggled to process what they were seeing. Notice how we're not laughing at your attempts to escape, Gray continued. Notice how we're not mocking your primitive understanding of dimensional physics. That's the difference between humanity and those who chose to mock us. We understand the responsibility that comes with power. The remaining Dominion fleet hung helpless in space, their 4th and 5th dimensional technology, now seeming like children's toys compared to what humanity had unveiled. Walker brought up a final set of calculations on her display. Admiral, she said, should we show them the real reason we needed all 7 dimensions? Gray nodded. The Council needs to understand exactly what they were mocking. The Infinity's edge began its final maneuver. The ship didn't just move through dimensions. It bent them, folded them, rewrote the very fabric of space-time. In an instant, the entire Dominion fleet found their ships gently but firmly relocated to their home system, billions of light-years away. That, Walker announced to the stunned Council observers, is how humanity travels through space. We don't force our way through dimensions. We ask them to cooperate. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of various Council species trying to process what they had just witnessed. The galaxy's understanding of physics had just been completely rewritten. And humanity was just getting started. The Grand Council chamber had never been so quiet. The vast circular room, designed to hold representatives from over 1,000 advanced species, was filled to capacity. Yet no one made a sound as Commander Reed walked to the central platform. The silence wasn't just from shock anymore, it was from fear. Reed's hologram appeared simultaneously in 7 different locations around the chamber, each one perfectly solid and real, each speaking in perfect sync. It was a casual demonstration of power that made several Council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. 3 months ago, all 7 Reeds began. I stood in this chamber and listened to you laugh at humanity's primitive technology. His voice was calm, but it carried an edge of steel. Today, we're going to discuss the future. Speaker Marcus, his silver skin still dulled from stress, stood up. Commander Reed, the Council formally apologizes for our previous behavior. We had no way of knowing. No, Reed cut him off. You had every way of knowing. You chose not to look. You chose to mock instead of mentor. You chose to laugh instead of lead. Dr. Walker appeared next to each Reed hologram, her own images shifting through dimensional planes that made several Council scientists cover their eyes. Let me show you what you missed while you were laughing, she said, bringing up a massive holographic display in the center of the chamber. This is the complete mathematical proof for 7-dimensional physics. We discovered it 300 years ago. The equations floating in the air made even the most advanced Council mathematicians gasp. It wasn't just the complexity, it was the elegant simplicity at its core. 300 years. A crystalline being vibrated in shock. But you were barely reaching your moon 50 years ago. We were reaching our moon using 3-dimensional technology, yes, Walker explained, because we understood something you didn't. True power isn't about showing off. It's about knowing when not to show power. Reed's 7 forms moved through the chamber, addressing different sections of the Council directly. While you were busy flaunting your 4th and 5th dimensional capabilities, humanity was quietly mastering all 7. While you were mocking developing species, we were watching, learning, preparing. The display changed to show the Infinity's Edge's recent battle with the Crimson Dominion fleet. The Council members watched again as humanity's ship casually rewrote the laws of physics that they had thought were unbreakable. But why hide? The blue-skinned delegate asked. Why pretend to be less advanced? Because we wanted to see who you really were, Reed answered. And you showed us. You showed us how you treat species you think are beneath you. You showed us what the galaxy would become without intervention. Walker brought up new displays, showing plans for educational institutes, technological sharing programs, and defensive pacts. This is what we're offering now, not dominion, not revenge, but partnership. Under human leadership, someone in the chamber muttered. Under human protection, Reed corrected. All 7 of his images turned to face the speaker. Unless you prefer we demonstrate more of our capabilities. The chamber quickly fell silent again. Here are humanity's terms, Reed continued. First, all mockery of developing species ends today. Second, any species with advanced technology will be required to participate in a galactic mentorship program. Third, any act of aggression against a developing world will be met with immediate response. And if we refuse, the bold voice called out. Walker smiled and made a small gesture. Instantly, Every piece of advanced technology in the chamber, from personal shields to dimensional communicators, simply stopped working. "That's what happens when you understand all 7 dimensions," she said quietly. "You can turn off the first 6. The council chamber erupted in panicked whispers. Reed waited patiently until order was restored. "We're not here to rule," he said finally. "We're here to guide, to protect, to ensure that no species has to advance while being mocked and threatened as we were." He paused, looking around the chamber. "The galaxy is changing. You can change with it, or you can be left behind." One by one, the council members began to nod. They understood now. The species they had laughed at weeks ago was now the most powerful force in known space. And unlike them, humanity remembered what it felt like to be the underdog. 1 year after humanity's revelation of their true power, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. From the observation deck of the newly constructed Earth Embassy on the Council's capital world, Commander Reed watched ships from 100 different species practicing dimensional travel under human guidance. "It's quite a sight, isn't it?" Dr. Walker said, joining him at the window. "Look at that. The same council species who laughed at us are now proudly celebrating their first successful 6th-dimensional jump." Reed nodded, watching as a group of silver-skinned students, Speaker Marcus's own children among them, learned the basics of 7-dimensional mathematics from human teachers. Their eyes shone with wonder rather than mockery now. "How are the developing worlds doing?" Reed asked, though he already knew the answer. Walker brought up a holographic display showing dozens of younger civilizations making technological leaps, without the constant threat of advanced species hanging over them. "They're flourishing. The Crimson Dominion's former victims have made particularly impressive progress." The Crimson Dominion itself had undergone the most dramatic change. After their fleet's embarrassing defeat, they had been the first to accept humanity's new order. Now their ships served as part of a peacekeeping force, protecting the very species they once terrorized. "Admiral Gray sent an interesting report this morning," Walker continued, pulling up another display. "The Infinity's Edge just completed its first training mission with a mixed-species crew. Even had a few council members aboard." Reed smiled at that. The same beings who had once mocked humanity's primitive technology now considered it the highest honor to serve aboard a human vessel. "And the best part," Walker added, her eyes twinkling, "not one of them laughed at the junior crew members who were still learning. Not one moment of mockery. They remembered our lessons well." Outside, a group of ships from a newly contacted civilization was arriving for their first council meeting. Unlike the past, there were no snickers or jokes about their simple 3-dimensional vessels. Instead, they were greeted with respect and offers of assistance. "I received another request from the Council Science Division," Walker said, scrolling through her messages. "They want to know if we're ready to reveal our research into the theoretical 8th dimension." Reed raised an eyebrow. "Are we?" "Maybe in another few hundred years," Walker laughed. "Let them master 7 first. Speaking of which," she gestured to a notification on her screen. "The first class of multi-species dimensional physics students is graduating next week. They want you to give the commencement speech." Reed watched as more ships arrived through various dimensional planes. Some used the old 4th-dimensional shortcuts, others attempted more advanced maneuvers. All of them, regardless of their level of advancement, were treated with respect. "A year ago, they laughed at us," Reed mused. "Now they learn from us. Not because we forced them to, but because we showed them a better way." The Infinity's Edge appeared briefly in high orbit, its impossible geometry still inspiring awe even among those who now understood the principles behind it. The ship had become a symbol, not of humanity's power, but of the potential that lay within every species. "Commander," a young aide approached them, "the Council is ready for today's session. They're waiting to discuss the new protective measures for pre-spaceflight civilizations." Reed nodded and straightened his uniform. As he and Walker headed to the council chamber, they passed dozens of alien beings. Each one nodded respectfully, not out of fear, but out of genuine admiration. "You know what the best part is," Walker said as they walked. "Nobody's laughing anymore, but they are smiling." She was right. The mocking laughter that had once filled these halls had been replaced by something better, the quiet joy of species learning and growing together. As they entered the council chamber, Reed saw representatives from hundreds of worlds, both advanced and developing, all working together. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Power wasn't about domination or mockery. It was about responsibility and guidance. And humanity, the species that had pretended to be primitive while mastering forces beyond imagination, had turned out to be the perfect teachers, ready to guide another generation. Walker asked. Reed smiled. "Always. After all, we remember what it was like to be underestimated." He looked out at the assembled species, "And we'll make sure no one else has to learn that lesson the hard way." The galaxy had changed, the laughter had stopped, and in its place, something far better had grown. Understanding, respect, and the shared joy of discovery. Humanity had revealed its power, but more importantly, it had revealed its wisdom. And that, more than any seven-dimensional technology, was their true gift to the galaxy.